Today we're going to discuss the Mishnah in Avos, Parak Beis, Mishnah Aleph. It's a very short Mishnah, but there's a lot to be said about it. Rabbi Shua Omer, Ayin hara v'yetzara Ayin hara v'yetzara v'Sinas abrios motzin es adam min ha'olam. The Shua said, an evil eye, the evil inclination and hatred for humankind put a person out of the world. If you look on the right, you have the translation for the Bartanura. He says, the evil eye, this is like an evil eye, which does not suffice to what he has and seeks other things. So that first interpretation means that a person looks at other people in a negative way. Looks at other people and says, I am upset that that person's success. I am upset that that person has those objects or that wealth. I don't like the fact that that person has stuff or has accomplished a lot, which he's accomplished. It's not that you want to take it from that person. You're upset that they have that property or that accomplishment in life. So that's the first shot in the evil eye here. And some explain the evil eye that he inserts the evil eye into the money of his friend or his children and hurts him. So the question is what exactly? That's what we usually call ayin hara nowadays. Yeah. Like that's the second shot in the Bartanura. So let's talk about what exactly that means. I'll share with you a different screen now. This one. Okay. Do you see that screen? No. What screen do you see now? Do you see what? A screen which says Ayin hara notepad at the top?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we are. Okay, so this is something I wrote many years ago, probably around 25, 30 years ago. And it was when I was living in Chicago and giving Daf Yomi shir there. So that's why it starts with, I was asked by one of the Chicago Daf Yomi Chevra to dwell a bit on the topic of Ayin hara. It is particularly time to do so, as in yesterday's daf, back then, Bamtia 107b, it had a remarkable assertion that the overwhelming majority of individuals die because of ayin hara, and very few because of regular reasons. It says 99% of people die because of ayin hara, and 1% of people die from all other reasons. So if 99% of people die because of ayin hara, we have to understand what exactly ayin hara might mean. Yes. Sarmanucha.
How do they die from an ayin hara?
We'll get there. That's going to explain.
How do they die from an...
We're going to explain that. We're going to explain. Okay? So of course, the Rambam I'm going on in the text, right? Of course, the Rambam does not paskin like Gemara's based on ayin hara. And I would suspect that a rationalistic approach, that means if everything is based on reason and nothing is magical or mystical, would necessarily reject ayin hara to either a complete or partial extent. I'd be interested in what Reb Shamshon Fall Hirsch had to say for anything on the topic. He was a big rationalist who looked at things with reason, not with mysticism or magic. Now, I'm going to give now an explanation how ayin hara could work, even according to a rationalist who looks at things with complete logic and not with, mysticism or magic. But the Rambam, in fact, never brings down in halacha these concepts of ayin hara. There's, in fact, the Gemara Bava Basra, which says two people who have fields next to each other, have yards next to each other, have to build a wall, which actually not yards or it's gardens, gina, two gardens next to each other. They have to build a wall between them so that one won't look at the stuff growing at the stuff in the other one's yard, other one's garden, and give it an ayin hara. And look at it in a negative way. So the Rambam doesn't bring this down, because the Rambam doesn't hold that there is such a thing as ayin hara. He holds that whatever it means, it's not real. Maybe it's a mushroom or something, and therefore according to the Rambam, you would not have to build a wall between one garden and another garden because he doesn't know the concept of ayin hara. There might be other reasons to build a wall, but not the reason the Gemara gives there, which is ayin hara. Okay, but there could be a way of explaining it. I'd assume that the rationalists might accept Ayin Hara as a form of kitruk in shamayim, similar to walking under a precarious wall, and thus would not be a direct impact of the onlooker on the person on whom he looks, but a form of triangulation. I'm going to explain this in a minute. The aspersion cast by the onlooker makes an impression in the heavens, and things that might have been overlooked then become significant, and may doom an individual that was otherwise cruising unnoticed despite his iniquities, his averos. Let me just explain this, then I'll come back to some. Give me a second. So the Gemara says you should never walk under a wall which is about to fall. Why? Because we don't rely, ain't some milanes. You don't rely on a miracle that the wall's not going to fall when you walk underneath it. And even if they make for you a nace and the wall doesn't fall, then they take away from your merit in Shamayim, because some of your merit was used up in making this miracle for you. But besides that, Gemara says that at that point they judge you. If you put yourself into a dangerous situation, they judge you. Is this person worthy of saving, or is this person not worthy of saving? In other words, before that, a person is not judged constantly in Shamayim, but if you go somewhere where you're tempting fate, then you are judged in Shamayim at that point in time to see if you're worthy of saving. So therefore, the person who's walking underneath a precarious wall is putting himself in a situation where he's being judged. So in that case, he might be judged negatively and bad things might happen. So that way, Ayin Hara is not direct. It's not that me looking at you does something to you, but rather me looking at you negatively could bring about in Shamayim. Reuven is thinking negatively about Shimon. Let's see if Shimon deserves those negative thoughts and something should happen to Shimon or not. Yes?
Why did he not believe in like an Ayin Hara?
Because he didn't accept that there were things. Rambam was very much against things which are magical or mystical. Everything had to have a cause and effect. In other words, if you take Ayin Hara the way we're about to see it, in the next paragraph, it doesn't really have a cause and effect in my deeds. I might be a big tzaddik and still be subject to Ayin Hara. Or I might be a big Rasha and not be subject to Ayin Hara. The Rambam didn't tolerate perspectives like that. He found that to be not something which squared away with his perspective of how the world should work. So let's see the next one. Next paragraph. The classic approach, that of Reb Tzadok, and even surprisingly, the Malbim, who usually is more rationalistic, is that rays emanate from your eyes when you look at something. Okay, so the ancient Greeks had a big question. How does sight work? Does the object enter into your eye, or do you send out rays which then bounce back from the object and enter your eyes? Now that, if you know the way a sonar or radar works, that's how it works. If the radar or the sonar sends out signals, they hit whatever object they hit, and then they bounce back to the antenna, and now you know that there's something there. But radar does it by mass, and sonar does it by sound, but something comes out and then bounces back. So the ancient Greeks thought maybe that's the way vision works. Your eyes send out something and then it bounces back to you. We know that the current science holds it doesn't work that way. Current science holds that the light bounces off the object in front of you and then comes into your eye. Your eye doesn't send out anything. Okay? But it may well be that even though scientifically it doesn't work that way, perhaps spiritually it works that way. In other words, your eyes do send out a spiritual ray, which can be positive or negative. I think Superman had X-ray vision, so I guess I'm not sure that worked. I guess something went out from his eyes, hit the thing, and brought back the X-ray vision. Anyway, so this is something. When you look at someone or even something, for example, as Gemara which says, "Al tilcham es lechem ra ayin." Don't eat the bread of a person who uses Ayin Hara, because they can affect the stuff with the food. If they look at food in a negative way, then they can affect it negatively as well. So when you look at someone askance in a negative way, the rays that emanate from your eyes are poisoned, and that poisonous quality then adheres. It means it goes into the person or object upon whom or which you have looked. A tzaddik says it works in relative fashion, as the object of the gaze may be impervious, he might be resistant to that type of venomous ray, as was the case of Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik, we know, was not subject to Ayin Hara. It's a special bracha he had, and anybody who tried to put an Ayin Hara on him, it didn't work. Okay? So therefore, not everybody's subject to Ayin Hara the same way, but if, according to this understanding, again, when you look at something, it affects that thing that you're looking at. By the way, as you know, it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. I'm sure many of you had the experience of feeling that somebody's watching you. Like, you're in a public place, and you feel somebody's watching me, somebody's staring at me. I've had that experience. Have any of you had that experience? Okay. I can only see Hannah right now, and she's nodding her head, so I assume that she speaks for all of you.
Yeah.
What? Somebody else said something?
Yeah, I always have that experience.
Yeah. Okay, so how does that work? It seems like it works something similar to what they're saying here. In other words, something's coming from their eyes and hitting you, and you're aware of it. I don't know how. I don't know how it works. But that seems to be the case. So this perspective is in line with several Gemaras, such as the Gemara in Shabbos of Shimon Bar Yochai, his son Rabbi Elazar, come out of the cave, and everywhere they look is consumed. It's after 12 years in the cave, they come out, and it says everywhere they look, and they, in a negative way, started burning, went on fire, because they, according to this understanding, the rays came out of their eyes, and they're very holy rays, and anything which did not meet with their approval immediately burnt up. Then after the second time they exit, in other words, Hashem said, you came to destroy my world, go back into the cave. They went back into the cave for a year. And the second time when they came out, so it says that Roshim Bar Yochai's gaze healed where Rabbi Elazar's gaze afflicts. Okay, so that means that Rabbi Elazar still looked at things in a negative way, but Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai learned how to look at things in a positive way. The Gemara in a couple of places, in Baba, for example, says that Rabbi Yochanan looked at a wayward Talmud and turned him into a pile of bones. So the case of Rabbi Yochanan looked at a Talmud had doubted what he said in Shir about a certain thing, and then the Talmud came back and said, you know what? Now I realize you're right about the thing. Rabbi Yochanan looked at him and said, until now you didn't believe me. And he turned him into a gal shalat samos, a pile of bones. This is direct impact that harms the subject or object of the rays that emanate from the eye of the beholder. There are rationalistic explanations of those Gemaras, however, as well, including the Telzer Rav, Rabbi Yosef Bloch, who says that making an individual into a pile of bones means to make him feel that his entire existence is meaningless. But the way he understands it, it's not necessarily literal that that person disintegrated, but like when you're embarrassed and you feel ashamed, and you feel there's even an expression in English, you're so embarrassed you want to die. So that's what happened. So those people, they had the experience as if their entire life was meaningless and they wished they weren't here anymore. So that'd be, again, a rational, meaning a logical explanation which doesn't come out to mysticism or magic. Perhaps it is because the Rambam felt strongly that vision does not work in this manner. You don't send out rays, that he rejected Ayin Hara. Be that as the Meila Maisa, in fact, one can accept a spiritual dimension to a gaze, in other words, that it could do something negative, even if one does not accept that vision works that way. I mean, you don't actually see things with your optical nerve by sending out signals. Nevertheless, it could be that in a spiritual way you send out signals which affect other stuff. There are people who go around, there's particularly a Rebbitzin from Yerushalayim, who goes around melting lead. Lead has a very low melting point. So she melts lead, and she'll do one of two things. I think they do one of two things. I'm not sure which one she does. They either put a towel on your head and pour the lead, the molten lead on the towel, or they'll take a glass of water and pour the molten lead into the water. And then, of course, the lead solidifies, right? When the lead solidifies, it turns into interesting shapes. So this woman will tell you, based on the shapes which she sees, what Ayin Horas are impacting upon you. And then she'll keep
That's cool.
then she'll keep on reciting the tefillos or whatever until finally the lead comes out smooth. So I believe this is nonsense, and the earliest source I could find from it is in a German superstition from non-Jews, and they still have non-Jews in Germany still have this custom on New Year's Eve. It's called Bleigissen. They take the lead and they pour it into water, and they predict the future for the coming year. So I don't know how Jews managed to take over this custom, but there is yes.
I don't think they predicted this year well.
Who knows what they predicted? But I don't know either. But the point is that this is a way in which people say that they can get rid of Ayin Horas which are against you. I don't think it's actually works, but there are people who go around and say that they know how to do it. So if it's a magical thing, that makes sense. If it's something which is not magical, if it's something which is rational, meaning by looking at you in a strange way, I aroused on you a din in Shamayim, then pouring as much lead as you want is not going to do any good. Okay? So, I don't know if it's a paragraph which begins R.E.E. Dessler. Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler in Michtam Leo Volume 4, page 5, offers another explanation. All souls are intertwined in some way, some to a greater degree and some to a lesser degree. But universal connectivity is a spiritual reality. Thus, my attitude towards your soul affects its status. Now, it depends. If we are very closely bonded spiritually, then the impact is greater. And vice versa, if we're less closely bonded, then the impact is lesser. Still, some grip hold is essential. If a person is totally l'shem shamayim in everything he does, and other directed in everything he does is to do good to other people, or very humble, he's a big onav, and self-effacing, he's a shval ruach, then the interaction between him and the others is more out than in, and others who deploy Ayin Hora against him will not be particularly successful. Meaning that if a person is constantly attaching to other people in order to get things from them, he's much more susceptible to Ayin Hora being used against him. He has no force field, shield protecting him, because he's very vulnerable, because he's looking always to other people and wants to take or receive from other people. A person who doesn't look to receive from other people, but looks to give, so he's not as vulnerable, he's not as susceptible to Ayin Hora. But so based on this, your Ayin Hora will affect, if something that gives somebody else an Ayin Hora, it works much more devastatingly if those people have a direct connection. Because all neshamas are connected, but their neshamas are connected more closely. So therefore, it's going to have more of an impact than somebody who's more distant. But according to Rav Dessler, the idea of the Ayin Hora is that the connection between souls allows negative and positive. There's this concept of Ayin Tov as well. Allows negative and positive kind of flows to go from one to the next. This approach is in line with a couple of other Gemaras concerning Rabbi Yochanan, who was impervious to Ayin Hora, if I recall correctly, as a descendant of Yosef, with him causing the deaths of Rav Kahana, which he then reversed, and Reish Lakish, who did not reverse. While at least the latter case, the impact was not immediate, although it seems to have been direct, it seems that it was the interaction between the souls that caused the effectiveness of the Ayin Hora. Rabbi Yochanan basically killed with his glance. It says Rabbi Yochanan was old. He's very old and had very long eyelashes. I don't know why he didn't cut his eyelashes. And he didn't look. His eyes were usually closed. So it took an effort to open them up. When he wanted his eyes open, they took little forks and they put them in his eyelashes and pulled his eyelashes open. So one time in the middle of the shir, somebody was asking very questions. His name was Rav Kahana. And Rav Kahana had a cleft lip, so it looked like he was smiling in a certain way, or even sneering in a negative way. So Rabbi Yochanan opened his eyes, had his eyes open, and saw Rav Kahana kind of sneering at him. So he thought that all those questions he's asking is making fun of him. So therefore Rav Kahana dropped dead from Rabbi Yochanan's negative gaze at him. Later on, they explained to Rabbi Yochanan that he had the deformity, and that because of that deformity, he was not obviously making fun of Rabbi Yochanan, but that's just the way he looked. So then it says Rabbi Yochanan brought him back to life. Reish Lakish, who was Rabbi Yochanan's brother-in-law, had a similar experience. He was upset at Rabbi Yochanan about something, and he mentioned it to him. And Rabbi Yochanan again had his eyes opened, and Reish Lakish, evidently didn't die immediately, but he got sick and eventually died. And after that, Rabbi Yochanan did not bring him back. I'm not sure why not, but Rabbi Yochanan went crazy because he felt so bad about killing Reish Lakish and not having him to learn with that. Eventually, he went crazy, and Rabbanan died. And Rabbi Yochanan should die as well. So there, it seems that there these interactions between Rav Kahana and Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan had this impact by which the Ayin Hara of Rabbi Yochanan being upset caused a negative thing to happen to Rav Kahana and then to Reish Lakish. Now, last paragraph here. Of course, quirks like Ayin Hara bring into play basic questions of Midah Keneged Midah, precision in reward and punishment. In other words, if I didn't do anything, it seems unfair or unjust that if I didn't do anything wrong, that I should be affected by Ayin Hara. Right? Why should your Ayin Hara affect me if I'm a good person? Or if I didn't do any Aveira, at least, for which I should deserve to be punished. So this kind of random, according to this understanding, that Ayin Hara is a kind of magical, mystical thing, there's a certain randomness built into creation. It's besides the regular cause and effect, there is also a certain randomness both for bad and for good. Random bad things can happen, random good things can happen. This is a person, Reb Tzadok HaKohen says, just like there's a concept of a lottery in cash, in money, so there's a concept of lottery in other gifts which come from Shamayim. You know, and this always, when I speak about this, it always sticks in my mind, and it's kind of a strange connection. And you won't understand unless you've read Harry Potter. But in Harry Potter, there's have you read Harry Potter? Anybody? The whole series? So, in Harry Potter, there's a concept called a port key. A port key is an object which is placed in the middle of nowhere, and if you touch it, it transports you from one place to another place. Okay? It's like a portal, which is a key. What?
In the fourth book, when they're going to the Quidditch championship game.
Right, there's a port. Right, exactly. So a port key is a very random thing, right? I mean, if you picked up, could you do it deliberately? But if you pick up that object in the middle of the field, you had no idea what was going to happen. Poof, you can find yourself half a world away. So there is a certain randomness built into creation, by which, even though normally things are cause and effect, I do something good, I become a good person, good things either happen to me in this world or the world to come. I do bad things, I become a bad person, bad things happen to me either in this world or the world to come. But sometimes things are random. And the question is what you're going to do in that situation. And what other people are going to do in that situation if they're interacting with you. So according to this understanding of Ayin Hara, it's random. It's not because you necessarily deserve something, positive or negative. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu put kind of this randomness into creation. Also, it's a similar marshal which I never thought of before. If anybody ever plays Monopoly and you land on a certain square, you have to go to jail. Right? It's not fair. What did you do to go to jail? But that's the way, in order for the Bria to have unexpected events, which can have an impact, you have positive and negative events like that. So, and that's right here, that there are flip sides of positive quirks, like segulos, which segula is a thing which, the opposite of an Ayin Hara. It brings about a good end. You know, like if you have, it depends how you understand how it works, but let's say on the night of Rosh Hashanah, you eat the head of a fish, or the head of a sheep. So you hope that is the segula, that's an act which is going to bring you something positive in the coming year. right? There should be Rosh V'lo Zonav. That's something which is like a segula, a hope that this act will in of itself help you get a good year, even if you don't fully deserve it. Now, without the balance of Olam Haba, and it seems according to many Mekubalim, without a counterbalance of possible Gilgulim, reincarnations as well, they would be classic question marks of Tzaddik V'Rolo, Rosh V'Tovla. Why did Tzaddikim suffer? Why did Rishonim have it good? These are therefore areas in which we cannot fully understand cause and effect. Areas that Shekadosh Baruch Hu classified to Moshe Rabbeinu as Upanai Lo Yera'u. Panai Lo Yera'u, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he said to Hashem in Parshat Kisisa, I want to see you. So Hashem said to him, you can see the back of my head, but you can't see the front of my head. And Rashi brings down that the back of the head means the knot in the tefillin, right? So the way people understand that medrash normally means that it's a mashal, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's, the secrets of why things are in the front of the tefillin, where the parshias are, where you have actually written text. So the back of the tefillin, you have a knot. But so you could see the knot, you don't know the full why things are. You can only see from where things are coming, but not the full why. So that's the mashal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said you can't see the full why. Nobody in this world can fully understand why things happen. That's something which is reserved for the world to come. A little bit I'll show you, more than other people. I'll show you as high up as the back, as the knot of my tefillin, which is where things start coming down into this world, but not the full why. So we can't know fully why things work the way they do with Ayin Hara, with Ayin Tov either. But the way they work is obviously something which HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes sure in the long run is just and good and fair. Okay, so let's get back to the Mishnah. Now it's in the back? You see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So Rabbi Yeshua said, the evil eye, evil inclination, hatred for humankind, put a man out of this world. The truth is that these correspond very precisely to kinna, taiva, and kavod. Ayin Hara is kinna, it's jealousy. I don't want it, but I don't want you to have it either. Like the woman said, but when with the baby, with the two women for the baby in front of Shlomo Melech, gam li v'gam lach lo yeh. I don't want, as long as you don't have, I don't want either. That is an Ayin Hara. Ayetzar is when I want it. I have a taiva, I have a desire for this thing. I really want to have it myself. So that is not the opposite of Ayin Hara, but it's different. It's not that I mind that you have it so much, I want to have it myself. And Sinas Abrios, hating other people, corresponds to kavod. So it's because of my own kavod, I hate other people. I don't want them to be good. I don't want them to have it good, unless it helps somehow make me uplifted and more respected and more honored. And the Bartanur here says on the right-hand side, the hatred of creation is baseless hatred. That's the translation of Sinas Chinam. And the Rambam explains that he despises the company of the creations and loves to sit alone. So that, according to that second interpretation, means the Rambam is saying somebody wants to live as a hermit in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't want to have anything to do with other human beings. It's not why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created him. Hashem created us to be in contact with other human beings and to help each other. So that's the Rambam's interpretation. Sinas Abrios says a person does not want to associate. There's a fancy English word for it called a misanthrope. Misanthrope. I'm not going to spell it. I'm not going to write it out. Misanthrope. Misanthrope. Misanthrope is somebody who does not like other human beings. Okay? And Bartanur says a third shot. I heard this is referring to a hard man who brings the hatred of creations upon him and causes all to hate him. He's a difficult person. Nobody gets along with him. He doesn't get along with anybody else. So that's according to that third interpretation what Sinas Abrios is. But when I talk a little bit about Sinas Chinam, one of the al-chet we say on Yom Kippur is al-chet shechotan v'necha b'sinas chinam. Well, what is this hate of Sinas Chinam? So there's a sitter called Otzar Tfilos, in which there's a parish called Dover Shalom, who gives a beautiful interpretation. He says, you think that you don't hate anybody. It's not true. You might even hate your best friend. How do you hate your best friend? So the pasuk which says, Lo tistas achicha bilvavecha. Don't hate your friend, your brother in your heart. Which is an amazing thing. What do you mean? He's my brother. How do I hate him? Now, I know they say it.
Jealous.
What?
Jealous.
I'm sorry?
Jealousy.
Jealousy. They say a joke. That the v'haftarecha kamocha, it says v'haftarecha kamocha, you should love your friend. Right? But it says by a brother, lo tistas achicha bilvavecha, it says don't hate your brother. Why does it say love your brother? So the answer is that a friend you can love. A brother, all we can ask is at least you don't hate them. But we can't ask you to love them. So that's obviously talking about families where there's sibling rivalries. Anyway, but really means I should not hate my friend in my heart. And he says this is true about any person in the world. If let's say there's a prize, which somebody in the class wins, and I don't get it, and I'm upset, that's Sinas Chinam. Because you're upset that you didn't get it, you should be happy that the other person got it. It's very high madrega to reach. But otherwise it's Sinas Chinam. You're upset that they got it. You should be very happy that they got it. Let's say somebody else is successful in business, right? So you're upset that they're successful in business, right? Because you're not successful in business. So you think that for some reason you're upset because of something they did. They didn't do anything to you.
What about like Esav and Yaakov? Like they had he was his enemy, but like how should he love him if he's his enemy?
But the question is how they became enemies. Esav thought they were enemies because Yaakov stole the Bechorah from him. But Yaakov didn't steal the Bechorah from him.
Jealous,
right. So it really was, it came from him himself. Sinas Chinam was when the hatred comes, not because of something that somebody else did, but because I feel bad. And he says, Dover Shalom says, there's great Sinas Chinam even among Talmidei Chachamim. He says, one Talmid Chacham can be upset that the other Talmid Chacham's sefer is more popular. Or one teacher could be upset that the other teacher is more popular. Or that they have a better class. And it's not, and you won't even realize that you're upset at them or that you don't like them in this specific aspect, because you think it's somehow what they got deprived me of it, but it's not true. You should be happy for them that they got, because it's totally independent of what you have. If somebody else writes a good sefer or somebody else writes a bad sefer, but he's successful, you should be happy for him. If somebody else gives a better shir, you should be happy for him. But it doesn't work that way, because every one of us, I shouldn't say every one of us, many of us, measure our self-worth relative to the other person's worth. If that person is more worthy, in the sense they've accomplished more, or they've even gotten something, like won the award for being from some competition, so I feel bad because somehow it makes me feel I'm a lower level. And I attribute that to the other person. Well, it's not coming from the other person. It's coming from within me. So that, he says, the Sinas Chinam, again, is where the other person didn't do anything wrong. I just don't like them because I feel bad when I think of their success or their accomplishments or the possessions which they possess. So that's Sinas Abrios, hating other people without a base. And he says, the Rishon says that amazing thing, that you think that you have good friends, and they are your good friends, but that you don't hate them, just wait till they get 100 on a test and you get an 85. You may very well come to hate them at that point in time. That might not be the greatest example, but you get what I'm saying. Okay, I think we'll stop here for today. Everybody okay? Any questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, are you not supposed to feel that way? Because I feel like most people do.
Yeah, you have to work at yourself. It's not easy. Over the course of your lifetime, it's one of the mitos which the Gra says that you have to break. And if not, why are you alive? But it's not easy. It takes a long time to work on. I don't even know most people succeed. What?
Thank you, Rabbi.
What about like the babies? They're always jealous of other babies. Like their toys.
That shows that it's a mita that they have to get rid of. They won't be able to get rid of it until they're able to think it through. As the Chazal say, you have a Yetzer Hara when you're born, and the Yetzer Tov you only get when you become Bar Bas Mitzvah. because you have to be able to think in order to overcome that Yetzer Hara. Okay, have a good Shabbos, everybody.
You too. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.